Today I'm kicking off a new series of videos where I share port excursions I've been on and let you know what I thought, what they cost, and all of the details involved in case you're interested in similar excursions for yourself and would like to know more about them before you decide. Today we begin with my all-day excursion to Rome, Italy. It was called the Eternal City Small Group Tour. I booked this tour through Royal Caribbean while I sailed Symphony of the Seas on a week-long cruise around the Western Mediterranean. Before we begin, I have two things to mention. Number one, this is a video about a very specific port excursion I took in Rome, where we spent all day seeing lots of different things. And even though we saw a lot of things, by no means did we see all that Rome has to offer. So my first note is there are plenty more things to see in Rome, and naturally in all of Italy. This tour does not cover everything, and I'm not suggesting that this is the most perfect tour you could possibly take. It does cover quite a bit. It covers everything we could fit into one day. My second note is there are many ways to see Rome on your port day, including third-party vendors, sightseeing on your own, hiring a private car, you name it. Taking an excursion through the ship is not the only way to see anything. But that's what I did, so that's what I'm sharing here today. Okay, now on to the details. We docked in Civitavecchia, which is about 90 minutes away from Rome. We booked a tour through Royal Caribbean called the Eternal City Small Group Tour. This is what the tour promised. We were going to go explore Rome for a total of about 10.5 hours, and about 3 of those would be spent on the bus. We were going to stroll through St. Peter in Chains Church, visit the Sistine Chapel, visit the Vatican Museums and St. Peter's Basilica. Lunch was included at a cafe. We were going to see the outside of the Colosseum, have a little time for souvenir shopping, and we were going to walk past the ruins of the Roman Forum. Our tour warned us that this tour was not for guests with health conditions such as serious heart conditions, joint injuries, or respiratory problem. We were warned in the tour description that the physical activity level was considered strenuous and we would be walking 3 miles over uneven surfaces. This tour cost $250 each. Our tour began very early in the morning, pretty much as soon as the ship docked. We were told exactly where to meet in Studio B, and right on time we were called and led outside to the bus that waited for us. The bus was a really nice bus with great air conditioning, nice windows, no restroom on board. We stopped about 45 minutes into the drive at a gas station for a restroom break, and a lot of people grabbed sodas or waters at this point. Then we were given our headsets. As we drove through and looked at all the beautiful scenery on the side of the road, the guide gave us lots of history about where we were going and what we were going to see today. She really helped prepare us for the tour, and she really got us informed and excited. When we arrived in Rome, it was very exciting. We drove past the Colosseum, we could see the crowds and all of the architecture. We were so excited for this tour. We were dropped off in the city near the Vatican, so we had to walk about 15 minutes to actually get to the museum entrance. And this was our first stop of the day, the Vatican Museums. This tour took about an hour. We saw so much, but the Vatican Museums are enormous and you can't see everything in an hour. So, in a way, we just saw the tip of the iceberg, but what we saw was amazing. You're going to want to make sure and look at the ceiling as you walk through. It's a lot to take in. Everywhere you look is something fascinating. And there's also places to stop and look out the window, and that's very interesting. Now, we've had our headsets on, and the guide gave us a constant stream of information about what we were looking at, and this was very helpful. Otherwise, everything would have been a blur and just too much to take in. Now, I will say there was no time to stop and linger or read signs, so those headsets were very important. The Vatican Museum was shoulder to shoulder with other tour groups and other tourists. We had to stick with our guide, and we kept a steady walking pace the whole time. If you stopped to look at something, you were going to lose your group. So keep that in mind. If you have visions of just lingering over your favorite things and taking lots of pictures, that's probably not going to happen on this tour. We walked at a continuous pace for about an hour. Now, even though it was jam-packed, it was well worth going. I highly recommend seeing the Vatican Museums while you're there if you can fit it into your schedule. There's so many components to the Vatican Museum. There are sculptures, vases, ceilings, all kinds of things to see, tapestries like crazy. Of course, the Sistine Chapel is here. Pack your patience and plan on seeing what you can see, even though it's crowded. At this point, we entered the Sistine Chapel. You're not allowed to take video or pictures here. It was incredible. It was amazing. So worth seeing. Let me just warn you about this. Even though I said the Vatican Museum was shoulder to shoulder, the Sistine Chapel was 100 times worse. People were jammed in there so tight you could hardly move. And you were supposed to keep moving. There was no obvious place to just step to the side and look around and take your time. It was really a zoo in there. At this point, we left the Vatican Museums and stood outside in St. Peter's Square for a little bit. We regrouped. We took pictures. It was very warm, but it was really interesting to look around. The guide talked to us some more about what we were about to see in St. Peter's Basilica. We entered St. Peter's Basilica, and it was overwhelming and amazing. So much more than I could have imagined. Gold everywhere you look, huge high ceilings, so much history, so much to see. It just sprawled out everywhere. And it was very crowded in here as well, but it was so large that we were not shoulder to shoulder anymore. We could travel as a group more easily here. The guide had so much information to share with us. Everywhere you looked, there was marble, reliefs, gilding, sculptures. Fascinating place, well worth seeing. After we left St. Peter's, we had about 20 minutes in the official Vatican gift shop. Everything in the gift shop has been blessed. We walked around the corner to a cafe. We had a prearranged lunch here with a designated menu. We were seated outside. We were given salad, turkey, bread, tiramisu. There was wine available, excellent food. While we were sitting there, musicians came and played. We saw a cardinal walk by. We saw a priest walk by. It was really nice. At this point, it was time to get back on the bus and head over to the Roman Colosseum. We drove over to the Colosseum and we were dropped off. Our guide warned us to hang on to our belongings. She said she recognized several pickpockets. We stood outside the Colosseum while the guide talked to us about the history of the structure. It was fascinating. She had a booklet she passed around that had illustrations of what the Colosseum looked like back in the day, the fires, the history, the role this building played in the Roman culture. We did not go inside the Colosseum. That was not part of this tour, but it was a really informative time standing there hearing the story, and it was amazing to be that close to the Colosseum. Then it was time to start walking past the Roman Forum. It was late in the day. It was very hot. We'd already walked over 3 miles over the course of the day. At this point, we lost a few people. They just couldn't keep walking. They went back to the bus. The bus was locked, but they found a cafe across the street from the bus and just sat there and waited for us to all come back. The Roman Forum is a series of crumbling buildings and fallen pillars. This dates back to the 7th century BC. It was a scene for public meetings, law courts, gladiator combats back in the day. Among some of the standing structures are what's left of the Temple of Saturn, the Temple of Romulus, the Curia, all kinds of things. It was much more fascinating than I expected. Our final stop was the Basilica of St. Peter in Chains. This is an incredible place. It dates back to the 1400s. It has a long history. There are 2 attractions here, the chains that held St. Peter while he was in prison before he went to trial, and the statue of Moses carved by Michelangelo. This was completed in 1515. The statue of Moses was huge. I did not expect that. It was magnificent. And of course, there are no words to see the chains that held St. Peter. This was not crowded at all, and we had plenty of time for photos and video. Really interesting place. Amazing. At this point, the tour was over and we needed to get back on the bus so we could make it back to the ship on time. We had one last opportunity to use the restroom at some gelato shops nearby. You needed to have Euro coins to make this happen, and you needed to be prepared to stand in line. Back on the bus, an hour-and-a-half ride back to the ship. She stopped halfway so we could use the restroom at the gas station again, and then we made it back to the ship. So, now that I've walked you through the entire tour, let's go back and look at all the things the tour promised we would see. Let's compare whether or not we saw everything we were supposed to see, whether or not we think it was worth $250, and some final thoughts on our day in Rome. First things first, did the tour deliver all that it promised? Yes, it did. The tour began on time and got us back to the ship on time as well, with no surprises or bumps along the way. Do I feel that the tour was worth $250? Absolutely. This was by far the best money we could have spent with our day in Rome. Now, there are many ways to see Rome, and it was completely an option to use a third-party vendor for probably less money, or to take the train to Rome and look around ourselves. However, this was absolutely perfect for us. What I loved about this was the amount of things we were able to see in one day. And I will tell you right now, what made all the difference with this tour was our tour guide. Our tour guide was excellent. She told us so much information. The information the tour guide gave us brought things to life. It kept us focused. It kept us aware of what we were seeing. Nothing ever became a blur. Nothing became overwhelming or just ran into each other. Aside from that, she did an awesome job at keeping us all together. There was quite a few of us. Some of the people there were straggling and struggling. Some people liked to wander off just a little bit. She did a super job making sure we all stayed together. Even though I got separated in the Sistine Chapel, that was not her fault, and she was looking for me when they came out. The other reason I feel that this was worth it was the ease of the whole day. It made seeing so much of Rome possible in the easiest way possible. All we had to do was show up in the gathering place at the ship at 7:30, and we were taking care of the rest of the day, including lunch, including restroom breaks. I could have headed to Rome on my own. I would have had to do quite a bit of research on trains, buying tickets for the Vatican Museums, how to get through the Sistine Chapel, how to navigate the city from site to site, where to eat lunch and where to find. That's all possible, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get on a bus and have the rest of the day taken care of for me. And that's what this tour delivered. We saw amazing things. We got a really good sampling of, and it was absolutely our favorite day of the entire tour. Getting to see so much with such ease, in such good hands, with so much information, made everything that much better. I hope this video has been helpful. I'm going to be making more videos like this whenever I do a shore excursion, in the hopes that if you're planning something similar, this might be helpful to you. Have you been to Rome? Do you have tips for your fellow traveler? If so, please leave a comment. If you have any travel advice for your fellow solo cruiser or Mediterranean cruiser, please leave a comment. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Happy sailing and enjoy your next cruise. Bye-bye.